In this presentation, I'm going to go over the last two strengths development principles, the approach of strengths development and application of our strengths. So with that in mind, our objectives for this presentation are: what is the approach of developing strengths and how do we apply our strengths? Just as a reminder, here are the four strength development principles, the big 4 A's. The first principle is awareness of our strengths. In this step, we do some self-reflection or formal assessment to identify our talents and our strengths. We talked about doing the Clifton Strengths Finders or Strengths Quest to do the formal assessment to get our top 5 signature themes, our strength themes, where we get our 5 talents groups. Then strength development principle number 2 is affirmation of our strengths. This is where we celebrate our uniqueness. We have those who know us well to affirm how they see our talents and our strengths being displayed in our life, that these things are good things about us, and we affirm and we celebrate that. Our third principle is the approach of developing strengths, and our fourth principle is application of our strengths. So in our third principle, the approach of developing our strengths, the goal here is to use our talents in combination with knowledge and skills to meet specific goals. This could be academic goals if you're a student like you are in this program. This can be professional goals. This can be personal goals. And one of the things I like to use is the strengths development plan, which you will actually use in your assignment. But the strengths development plan doesn't have to just be used in an academic setting. It can be used in your own personal setting. So let's look at a strengths development plan to help us meet a particular goal. So for the strengths development planning table is that you identify a specific talent. I like to have students to describe how that talent is portrayed in their own life. So for this particular student, how Maximizer showed up in their life is they perform at the best of their ability, and then they set a particular goal that they want to turn into a strength. So the assumption here is that the person already has some proficiency, and this is already kind of a strength for them. That's something, as we described earlier, it's not a weakness like me with grading. It's something that they already have proficiency at, but they want to get better at that, whatever that thing is. So for this particular student, the student wanted to improve proficiency at designing upper extremity strength training exercise programs. So they gave themselves a date by December 1st of 2017. They want to achieve that. And so we know that strengths are made up of knowledge, made up of skills, and they're made up of experiential knowledge or experience. So what knowledge did this student need to turn that area into a strength? This student needed upper extremity anatomy and physiological information. The skills that the student needed was specific upper extremity strength training routines. They need to know how to do that. And so they need to experience and hands-on application of those upper extremity strength training routines. And I also have students do an accountability person. Who's going to hold you accountable? Who's going to help you through this process? For this student was Professor Smith, who is their professor for the course that the student was enrolled in. Maybe the class was strength and conditioning type course. So that's our rehabilitation therapeutic exercise class, or injury identification and prevention class, or something like that. So the professor for that class is going to be one of their accountability partners, and the other accountability partner is Coach Jones, who's a strength and conditioning coach at the place of college where the student is at. So these students will, or these people will hold this student accountable and help and mentor them to meet those goals by helping them get the knowledge, get the skills, and get the experience. So that's one way we can develop our areas of strength. Again, we have to be proficient in the area already to turn it into a strength. We're not going to work on our weaknesses and try to turn our weaknesses into a strength. We're working on things that we're already very proficient at. We just want to turn those things into more of an area that we are successful at, because that is what a strength is something that we do consistently well. So our fourth strengths development principle is application of our strengths. And here, what we want to do is be proactive in applying our areas of strengths to other areas. So how can you apply what you do well in other areas of work? For me, I like to do, I think I'm strong in curriculum design or program modifications. So how I can use that in other areas other than my teaching is being on committees where we get to plan and design new programs here at the university, helping other faculty members to modify their coursework. So it's using the things that I have a strength in and applying it to different areas at work or at home, in my personal and professional life. So that's the same thing that you can do. This can be used if you're working with students to mentor them, to help them select courses that are their areas of strength, to help them maybe even make career plans, to find maybe even extracurricular activities, do internships, develop mentoring relationships, or some other targeted growth areas. So it's once you know what your areas of strengths are, then applying them to different areas in your life. So I want to provide a couple examples of how we develop in our areas of our strengths. So we have our talent, which is our natural way of thinking, feeling, or behaving. We're born with that. We can't change it. We need to invest our time practicing the skill, developing your skill, and building your knowledge base. If we do those things in our areas of proficiency, they'll turn those things into an area of strength. And again, a strength is the ability to consistently provide near perfect performance on an activity. It's consistency, near perfect, doesn't burn you out, gives you energy. That's a strength. Here's another example. So how does a talent become a strength? So we have a talent, which again we're predisposed at or born with. It's the way God has made us. We have our investment, which requires effort and energy, and that turns into a strength, which means it's been developed. The critical thing is investment of time, investment of effort, the investment of energy in our time practicing, developing that skill, building that knowledge base. That's where something really becomes a strength, is that investment there. You're not going to be a better student if you don't spend the time studying. You're not going to become a better athlete if you don't spend the time practicing that particular skill. So let's watch this video.
Some of you may be curious, how do I discover what's right with me? And so one way to approach that process is through self-reflection and to ask the question, what energizes me? But one of the main ways that we would recommend that you acquire clarity on the way that you're designed and the way that you're wired is by taking the Clifton Strengths Finder. The tool was developed by Clifton, and it reveals your top areas of talent. Yes, your top areas of talent. And it's a unique constellation that's only fitting for you. It details the way that you think, the way that you behave, and the way that you naturally approach life. It is your lens. And so some of you have the talent of woo. And so you enjoy walking into a space and making connections. The term woo actually stands for winning others over. Others of you may have the talent of responsibility. And so you take psychological ownership of whatever's been delegated or tasked for you to do. Others of you may have the signature theme of empathy. And so it's very natural for you to be understanding and to have this empathic capacity. The bottom line is this: it doesn't matter which themes are in your top 5. They're all good. And the emphasis should really be on the approach. I think the beauty of the Clifton Strengths Finder is that it provides this common language, but most importantly, it creates space for us to consider the strengths perspective, seeing the potential and possibility in people and situations. Talent by itself is not enough. Talent needs to be coupled with intentional effort and developed into strengths. And strengths translate to results. So, what are some practical steps that you can take to develop your areas of talent that are reflected in your top 5 to strengths? Step 1 starts with assessment. So you need to take the Clifton Strengths Finder tool immediately, like yesterday. Take the Clifton Strengths Finder and discover your top 5 signature themes. Number 2 is affirmation. So after you discover what your top 5 themes, I would encourage you to print out the results report and have someone who knows you very well, maybe a family member, maybe a friend, maybe a sibling, and have them read over the results and ask them, do you feel like these words and descriptions characterize the way that I think and who I am? The last step is all about application. And so think about ways that you can strategically put these top 5 themes into practice, academically, relationally, and even professionally. So we encourage you today to take the Clifton Strengths Finder, discover your top 5, and allow the Strengths Quest journey to begin.
That video provides us a really good overview of the strengths development principles. A little bit different, but same thing. What I like to do is provide you one more example of doing strengths development. So the strength that the person wants to develop is the tennis forehand. So they have proficiency in this. It's not a weakness, it's something that they do fairly well, but they want to get better at it. So these are their talent themes: ideation, strategic, achiever, learning, futuristic. And we want to leverage those talents to help this person improve in their areas, or in their tennis forehand. So the knowledge that this person needs is of the tennis racket grip, body position on the court, because where you're on the court is going to change on how you do your tennis forehand. The biomechanics of striking the ball and those type of fun things. The skill that they need to practice are the forehand, obviously. And then we have some kind of progressive forehand techniques, because it's going to change depending on where you're on the court and those type of things. So we spend our time, our investment, our energy in the skill and our knowledge. That's where we get better at the tennis forehand. I don't think this is too surprising for us in the kinesiology, athletic training, sports arena, because this is pretty much what we do in athletics. The focus that we're changing is, what do we focus our growth in? Do we focus our growth in the things that we don't do well, the weaknesses, or do we focus our energy and time on the things that we do well already and try to get better at those things? The focus is on the things that we do well. So as a summary, we develop a strength by identifying specific activities to improve. Again, these are things that we're already good at. We gain knowledge and skills in those activities, and then we invest our time and effort to improve in those areas. Then we apply our strength to different and new opportunities at our work, our relationships, and in our personal life. We can also use this for team development. I think the whole strengths perspective is really good if you're a coach or you're part of a team, at a work team, you're part of a PE teaching team, or you're part of a coaching team, you're part of an athletic training staff, you're part of an athletic department staff, all those type of things to work together to develop team. One last thing I'll say before we end this presentation is that the goal is that we celebrate the things that make us unique and celebrate the things that the way God has made us and the different types of talents that we have. It's not to separate us, but to bring us together and to make us a better team and a better group of individuals. And lastly, I forgot to talk about is the leadership potential. How do we lead with using our strengths and lead others in their areas of strengths? So we place people in areas that they will be successful because those are those areas that they're already strong in, and manage around those areas of weakness.